Hi there. Preparing for D467 OA exam can feel overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. Stick with us, and we're going to help you with it. Check out our website for D467 OA questions and answers, all free. These exams are a real challenge, so we made all our guides and practice questions totally free. In this video, we will cover questions from data fundamentals, database management, information ethics, SQL operations, security and governance. So, let's get started.
1. A hospital tracks daily patient visits as whole numbers and also records exact body temperatures with decimal values. If an analyst needs to distinguish between these two measurement approaches, which term best describes data that is counted with no fractional values allowed? A. Continuous data. B. Qualitative data. C. Discrete data. D. Nominal data. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, C. Discrete data. Explanation. Option C is correct because discrete data is counted and limited to whole values without fractions. Patient visits counted as whole numbers perfectly fit this category, since partial visits are not possible. Option A is incorrect because continuous data is measured and can take almost any numeric value, including decimals. Body temperature fits continuous data, but whole number patient visits do not match this type. Option B is incorrect because qualitative data describes categories, names or descriptions rather than numeric counts. The hospital's numeric patient visit counts are quantitative, not qualitative data in this scenario. Option D is incorrect because nominal data is a qualitative subtype used for unranked categories. Counting daily patient visits produces numeric values, which does not fit the definition of nominal categorical data. Alright, let's get into the difference between discrete and continuous data, because this trips people up more than it should. The question gives us a hospital that tracks two things: daily patient visits as whole numbers and body temperatures with decimal values. These represent two fundamentally different ways of measuring. Discrete data is data that you count, a tenta. It lands on whole numbers and nothing in between. You can have 10 patients or 11 patients, but you can't have 10.37 patients. That's what makes it discrete. Continuous data, on the other hand, is measured and can land on virtually any value, including decimals, like a temperature of 98.6 degrees. So why aren't the other options right? Qualitative data deals with names and categories, not numbers. Nominal data is a subtype of qualitative, where categories have no order at all. Neither of those fits when we're talking about counting whole numbers. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question mentions whole numbers, counting, or no fractions allowed, that's your signal for discrete data. Quick recall hook. Discrete =, distinct whole units. If you can't split it, it's discrete. 2. A retail company surveys customers about their favourite product categories and then ranks satisfaction from 1 to 5 stars. Which data classification correctly identifies the satisfaction star ratings as having a meaningful sequence that customers follow when providing their feedback? A. Ordinal data. B. Nominal data. C. Discrete data. D. Continuous data. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, A. Ordinal data. Explanation. Option A is correct because ordinal data is qualitative data with a set order or scale. The 1 to 5 star satisfaction ratings follow a clear ranked sequence showing increasing levels of customer satisfaction. Option B is incorrect because nominal data categorizes information without any particular ranking or order. Star ratings from 1 to 5 have a clear sequence, which makes them ordinal rather than nominal qualitative data. Option C is incorrect because discrete data refers to counted numeric values with limited possibilities. While stars are whole numbers, the question focuses on the ranked classification of satisfaction, which is ordinal. Option D is incorrect because continuous data can take almost any numeric value and is measured rather than ranked. Star ratings represent ordered categories on a scale, not measurements on a continuous numeric spectrum. Now let's tackle ordinal versus nominal data, because both are qualitative, but they work differently. A retail company asks customers to pick their favourite product category. That's nominal, just labels. But then the company also asks customers to rate satisfaction from 1 to 5 stars. Those stars follow a ranked sequence. 1 star means unhappy, 5 stars means thrilled. That ranking is what makes it ordinal data. Ordinal data is qualitative data with a set order or scale. The key distinction from nominal is that nominal categories have no natural sequence. Picking electronics over clothing doesn't imply a ranking. Now you might think star ratings look like discrete data because they're whole numbers, but the question specifically focuses on the ranked classification, not the counting aspect. Continuous data doesn't fit either. Stars are fixed categories on a scale, not measurements that can take any value. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When you see ranked categories, scales or ratings with a clear sequence from low to high, that's ordinal. Quick recall hook. Ordinal equals sign order and order. If the categories line up in a sequence, it's ordinal. 3. An analyst receives a data set where each row contains one observation per time point for each customer, resulting in multiple rows per customer. The analyst needs to restructure it for a simple line chart comparing trends. Which data format is this dataset currently stored in? A. Wide data B. Structured data C. Nominal data D. Long data. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, D. Long data. Explanation: option D is correct because long data stores each row as one time point per subject, meaning each customer has multiple rows. This format supports detailed storage and advanced analysis but is harder to read in simple charts. Option A is incorrect because wide data gives every subject a single row with multiple columns for different attributes. The described dataset has multiple rows per customer, which is the opposite of how wide format data is organized. Option B is incorrect because structured data refers broadly to data organized in rows and columns. Both long and wide formats can be structured, so this answer does not specifically identify the format described in the scenario. Option C is incorrect because nominal data is a qualitative classification for unordered categories. The question asks about the shape and layout of the dataset, not the type of data value stored within its columns. Let's talk about long data versus wide data, because the shape of your dataset matters more than you'd think. The question describes a dataset where each row holds one observation per time point for each customer. So a single customer shows up across multiple rows. That's the definition of long data. In long format, you get one data point per row per subject. It's great for storing detailed information and running advanced analysis, but it's harder to read at a glance. Wide data is the opposite. Each subject gets one row and different attributes spread across multiple columns. Wide format is easier to scan and works well for simple charts like line graphs. The other options don't fit. Structured data just means rows and columns in general. And nominal data is about unordered categories. Neither tells you anything about the shape of a dataset. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. If the question says each subject has multiple rows, one observation per row, that's long data. If each subject has one row with multiple columns, that's wide data. Quick recall hook. Long data equals sign lots of rows per subject. 4. A marketing team collects survey responses listing each respondent's preferred social media platform without any ranking involved. The platforms include options like video sharing, photo sharing, and microblogging services. What type of qualitative data classification best describes these unranked platform categories? A. Ordinal data. B. Nominal data. C. Continuous data. D. Discrete data. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, B, nominal data. Explanation. Option B is correct because nominal data is qualitative data categorized without any set order. Social media platform preferences are simple categories with no inherent ranking or meaningful sequence between the listed options. Option A is incorrect because ordinal data requires a meaningful ranked order or scale among categories. The social media platform choices listed have no natural sequence from best to worst, so they cannot be ordinal. Option C is incorrect because continuous data involves measured numeric values that can have almost any value. Platform preference categories are text-based descriptions, not numeric measurements on any type of numeric scale. Option D is incorrect because discrete data consists of counted whole numbers with limited possible values. Social media platform names are categorical text labels and are not numeric counts, so discrete data does not apply. This one's about nominal data, and it's simpler than it looks. A marketing team collects survey responses about preferred social media platforms. The options are things like video sharing, photo sharing, microblogging. And there's no ranking involved. Nobody's saying video sharing is better than photo sharing in any ordered sense. These are just categories, plain and simple. That's nominal data, qualitative data categorized without any set order. Ordinal data needs a meaningful ranked sequence, like a rating from 1 to 5. These platform choices don't have that. Continuous data involves measured numeric values. Platform names are text, not numbers. Discrete data involves counted whole numbers. Again, we're dealing with text labels here, not counts. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When you see categories with no ranking, no sequence, and no implied order, that's nominal. The keyword is no order. Quick recall hook. Nominal equals sign names only, no order. 5. A data analyst compares two data sets. One contains audio recordings from customer service calls, while the other contains a spreadsheet of call durations organized by date and agent name. Which statement correctly identifies why one dataset would be classified as unstructured data? A. Audio files lack row-column organization. B. Spreadsheets contain qualitative values only. C. Audio files always use Boolean data types. D. Spreadsheets cannot store numeric data. Do you know the answer? The correct answer, A. Audio files lack row-column organization. Explanation. Option A is correct because unstructured data cannot be organized neatly into rows and columns. Audio files have no standard tabular format, making them a well-known example of unstructured data in the analytics field. Option B is incorrect because spreadsheets with call durations organized by date and agent contain quantitative numeric data in structured format. Whether data is qualitative does not determine if a spreadsheet is unstructured. Option C is incorrect because audio files do not use Boolean data types at all. Boolean values are true or false entries used in spreadsheets and programming logic, not a characteristic found in unstructured audio recordings. Option D is incorrect because spreadsheets regularly store numeric data like call durations and dates. This statement is factually wrong and does not explain why audio recordings are classified as unstructured data types. This question gets at the core of structured versus unstructured data. You've got two datasets, audio recordings from customer service calls and a spreadsheet of call durations organized by date and agent name. The spreadsheet is structured, rows and columns, clean and organized. The audio recordings, they don't fit into rows and columns at all. There's no standard tabular format for a sound file. That makes audio files unstructured data. The correct answer is that audio files lack row-column organization. The wrong options fall apart fast. Spreadsheets absolutely store numeric data. Call durations are numbers. Audio files don't use Boolean data types. Boolean is true or false logic used in programming and spreadsheets. And the claim that spreadsheets only hold qualitative values is flat out wrong. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question asks why something is unstructured, the answer almost always comes back to, it can't fit in rows and columns. Quick recall hook, unstructured = unruly, can't sit in rows. 6. A company surveys only its most loyal customers to determine overall brand satisfaction across all customer segments. The results show overwhelmingly positive feedback that does not match independent review sites. Which type of bias most likely caused these skewed and unrepresentative results? A. Observer bias. B. Confirmation bias. C. Interpretation bias. D. Sampling bias. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, D. Sampling bias. Explanation. Option D is correct because sampling bias occurs when a sample does not represent the full population. Surveying only loyal customers excludes dissatisfied ones, making the positive results unrepresentative of overall brand sentiment. Option A is incorrect because observer bias happens when researchers observe or record things differently based on personal perspective. The problem here is which customers were selected, not how the researcher observed responses. Option B is incorrect because confirmation bias involves seeking information that supports existing beliefs. While the company may prefer positive results, the core issue is the unrepresentative sample rather than selective interpretation. Option C is incorrect because interpretation bias is the tendency to interpret ambiguous situations consistently in a positive or negative way. The issue described concerns who was surveyed, not how the feedback was interpreted. This question is about sampling bias, and it's a classic example. A company wants to measure overall brand satisfaction across all customer segments, but they only survey their most loyal customers. Predictably, the feedback is overwhelmingly positive, and it doesn't match what independent review sites show. The problem? The sample doesn't represent the full population. That's sampling bias. By only asking loyal customers, you're cutting out anyone who's unhappy, indifferent, or left the brand entirely. The results look great on paper, but mean nothing for the broader picture. Observer bias is about researchers recording things differently based on their own perspective. That's not what happened here. Confirmation bias is about seeking evidence that supports what you already believe. Related, but the root cause is the bad sample, not selective interpretation. Interpretation bias is about reading ambiguous data consistently one way. The data here isn't ambiguous, it's just incomplete. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. If a question describes a survey where only a specific group was asked and the results seem skewed, sampling bias is your answer. Quick recall hook. Sampling bias = sample doesn't match the whole. 7. A researcher studying workplace productivity notices that employees work harder when they know they are being observed during the study period. The researcher's mere presence changes the behaviour being measured and recorded. Which alternative term also accurately describes this type of observer bias? A. Sampling bias. B. Experimenter bias. C. Confirmation bias. D. Interpretation bias. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, B. Experimenter bias. Explanation. Option B is correct because experimenter bias and research bias are alternative names for observer bias. The researcher's presence and observation methods directly influence the participants' behaviour and the data being collected. Option A is incorrect because sampling bias refers to when the selected sample does not represent the broader population being studied. The problem described here is the researcher's influence on behaviour, not who was selected. Option C is incorrect because confirmation bias occurs when someone interprets data to support pre-existing beliefs. The described scenario focuses on the researcher physically changing participant behaviour through their presence alone. Option D is incorrect because interpretation bias involves consistently reading ambiguous results in a positive or negative direction. The problem here is the researcher affecting participant behaviour during observation, not data interpretation. Here's a question about observer bias and its alternative names. A researcher studying workplace productivity notices employees work harder when they know they're being observed. The researcher's presence is literally changing the data. This is observer bias. And the question asks which alternative term also describes it. The answer is experimenter bias. Observer bias, experimenter bias, and research bias all refer to the same thing. The person conducting the study influences the results just by being there or by how they collect data. You might remember the memory tip from your study notes. The observer is also the experimenter and the researcher, never the spectator. Sampling bias is about who gets selected for the study, not about the researcher's influence. Confirmation bias is about cherry-picking data that supports your existing beliefs. Interpretation bias is about reading ambiguous results in one consistent direction. None of those match what's happening here. The researcher's physical presence is changing behaviour. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes a researcher influencing participants by their presence or methods, look for observer bias, experimenter bias, or research bias. Quick recall hook. OER, observer =, experimenter =, researcher. 8. A city government wants to understand public opinion about a new park. To avoid skewing results toward any particular neighbourhood, demographic group, or special interest group, which data collection strategy should the research team adopt for the most representative outcome? A. Collecting data from park visitors only. B. Surveying the most vocal community members. C. Using random sampling during collection. D. Asking only residents who live nearby. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, C. Using random sampling during collection. Explanation. Option C is correct because random sampling gives every member of the population an equal chance of being selected. This strategy prevents sampling bias and produces results that more accurately represent the entire community population. Option A is incorrect because collecting data only from current park visitors excludes residents who do not use parks. This creates sampling bias because the sample completely ignores a significant portion of the overall city population. Option B is incorrect because surveying only the most vocal community members introduces bias toward extreme opinions. Loud voices do not typically represent the average resident's perspective and would significantly skew the results. Option D is incorrect because asking only nearby residents biases the sample toward people most directly affected by the park. This approach ignores the perspectives of other city residents who might use or fund the facility. A city government wants honest public opinion about a new park. They want results that aren't slanted toward any particular neighbourhood, demographic, or interest group. The best strategy? Random sampling. Random sampling gives every member of the population an equal shot at being selected. That's what prevents sampling bias and produces results that actually reflect the whole community. The other options all introduce bias. Surveying only park visitors misses people who never go to parks. Their opinions matter too. Asking only the most vocal community members skews results toward extreme positions, which rarely represent the average person. Surveying only nearby residents cuts out the rest of the city, people who might still use or fund the park. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. Whenever a question asks about the best way to get representative, unbiased results, random sampling is almost always the answer. Quick recall hook, random =, representative. 9. An analyst working on a healthcare study unconsciously favours data that supports her original theory while dismissing contradictory evidence found in the same dataset. She genuinely believes her initial assumption was right all along. Which type of bias is this analyst most clearly exhibiting? A. Confirmation bias. B. Sampling bias. C. Observer bias. D. Interpretation bias. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, A. Confirmation bias. Explanation: option A is correct because confirmation bias is the tendency to search for or interpret information in ways that confirm pre-existing beliefs. Favouring supportive data while dismissing contradictory evidence from the same dataset matches this definition. Option B is incorrect because sampling bias involves selecting a sample that does not represent the whole population. The analyst has access to the full dataset, but is selectively focusing on supportive evidence rather than having a sampling problem. Option C is incorrect because observer bias refers to different people observing the same thing differently. The problem here is not about observation differences, but about selectively accepting data that confirms her existing theory and assumptions. Option D is incorrect because interpretation bias involves consistently viewing ambiguous situations in either a positive or negative way. The analyst is actively seeking confirming evidence and dismissing contradictions, not merely interpreting unclear data. This one is textbook confirmation bias. An analyst working on a healthcare study unconsciously favours data that supports her original theory while dismissing contradictory evidence from the same dataset. She genuinely believes she was right all along. That's confirmation bias. The tendency to seek out or interpret information in ways that confirm what you already believe. She's not picking a bad sample. The data is all there. She's selectively focusing on the parts that agree with her. Sampling bias would mean her dataset doesn't represent the population. But the dataset is fine. The problem is how she's using it. Observer bias is about different people recording observations differently. Interpretation bias is about reading ambiguous situations consistently one way. This analyst isn't dealing with ambiguity, she's actively ignoring contradictions. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. The phrase confirms what you already think is the dead giveaway for confirmation bias. If someone favours supporting evidence and dismisses the rest, that's confirmation bias every time. Quick recall hook. Confirmation =, confirming your existing belief. 10. Two analysts review the same ambiguous customer feedback about a product launch. One analyst consistently reads the comments as positive, while the other reads identical comments as negative. Neither changes their perspective after discussion. Which bias type best explains this consistent pattern? A. Confirmation bias. B. Sampling bias. C. Observer bias. D. Interpretation bias. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer. D. Interpretation bias. Explanation: option D is correct because interpretation bias is the tendency to consistently interpret ambiguous situations in either a positive or negative way. Each analyst reads the same unclear feedback differently based on their own interpretive tendency. Option A is incorrect because confirmation bias involves actively seeking evidence that supports existing beliefs. The scenario describes interpreting the same ambiguous feedback differently, not searching for information that confirms a prior hypothesis. Option B is incorrect because sampling bias occurs when a selected sample does not represent the population. Both analysts review the exact same feedback, so the issue involves interpretation style rather than any sample selection problem. Option C is incorrect because observer bias involves different people recording observations differently due to perspective. While related, interpretation bias specifically addresses how ambiguous information gets consistently read positively or negatively. Two analysts review the same ambiguous customer feedback. One reads it as positive every time, the other reads it as negative every time. Neither changes their mind after talking about it. This is interpretation bias. the tendency to consistently interpret ambiguous situations in either a positive or negative direction. The feedback itself is unclear, and each analyst brings their own lens to it. This isn't confirmation bias because nobody is hunting for evidence to back a pre-existing theory. They're both looking at the same unclear comments and simply reading them differently. Sampling bias doesn't apply. Both analysts have the exact same data. Observer bias is related but less specific. Interpretation bias specifically nails the pattern of consistently reading ambiguity one way. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes ambiguous data being read consistently positively by one person and negatively by another, that's interpretation bias. The word ambiguous is your trigger. Quick recall hook. Interpretation =, I read it my way. 11. A data analyst is designing a customer database and needs to guarantee that every record is uniquely identified without any duplicate or blank entries in the identifier column. Which database element serves this specific purpose of preventing duplicates and null values in one column? A. Foreign key, B. Primary key, C. Composite key, D. Metadata. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, B. Primary key. Explanation: option B is correct because a primary key uniquely identifies each record in a relational database table. It cannot contain null or duplicate values, which guarantees that every single record remains individually and reliably identifiable. Option A is incorrect because a foreign key links data between two different tables by referencing a primary key in another table. It does not serve as the unique identifier for records within its own table. Option C is incorrect because a composite key is a primary key built from multiple columns combined together. While it provides unique identification, the question describes a single identifier column and not a multi-column combination. Option D is incorrect because metadata provides descriptive information about data, such as file type, creator, and modification dates. It does not function as a unique record identifier within a relational database table. Time to talk about primary keys because they're the backbone of relational databases. An analyst is designing a customer database and needs every record to be uniquely identified. No duplicates, no blanks. That's exactly what a primary key does. A primary key is a column where every value is unique, and null values aren't allowed. It's like a fingerprint for each row. A foreign key is different. It links data between two tables by referencing another table's primary key. It doesn't guarantee uniqueness within its own table. A composite key is a primary key built from multiple columns combined, but the question specifies a single identifier column. Metadata describes data, things like file type, creator, and dates. It doesn't act as a record identifier inside a table. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question mentions unique identification, no duplicates, and no null values, the answer is primary key. Quick recall hook. Primary =, first and only, like a fingerprint. 12. A revenue table in a relational database contains columns for customer _ID, date _ID, branch _ID, and product _ID, all referencing primary keys in other tables. The revenue table itself lacks any single unique identifier column. What does this structural design tell you about this table? A. It uses multiple foreign keys only. B. It must contain Boolean values. C. It cannot connect to other tables. D. It requires exactly one primary key. Do you know the answer? Correct answer. A. It uses multiple foreign keys only. Explanation. Option A is correct because some tables do not require a primary key at all. A revenue table can function with multiple foreign keys, referencing primary keys from other related tables without needing its own primary key. Option B is incorrect because Boolean values store true or false data and have nothing to do with how database keys are structured. The presence of foreign keys is entirely unrelated to whether Boolean data types exist. Option C is incorrect because foreign keys are specifically designed to create connections between tables. Having multiple foreign keys means this revenue table actually has strong relationships linking it to several other related tables. Option D is incorrect because not every table requires a primary key. The course material specifically states that a revenue table can have multiple foreign keys without having any primary key, making this claim factually wrong. Here's a tricky one about database structure. A revenue table has columns for customer underscore ID, date underscore ID, branch underscore ID, and product underscore ID. Every one of those columns references a primary key in a different table, but the revenue table itself doesn't have its own unique identifier column. So what's going on? This table uses multiple foreign keys only. And that's perfectly valid. Not every table needs a primary key. The course material specifically calls this out. A revenue table can have multiple foreign keys without a primary key of its own. The other options are wrong. Boolean values have nothing to do with key structure. Foreign keys are designed to connect tables, so saying this table can't connect to others is backwards. It has 4 connections, and saying it requires exactly one primary key contradicts what we just learned. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. If a question describes a table with multiple reference columns but no unique identifier, it's a table with foreign keys only and no primary key. Quick recall hook: revenue tables can run on foreign keys alone. 13. An e-commerce company has a product table with product underscore ID as the primary key and an orders table that references product underscore ID to link each order to its corresponding product. What is the specific role of product underscore ID when it appears inside the orders table? A. It serves as the order's primary key. B. It functions as a composite key. C. It acts as a foreign key. D. It works as structural metadata. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer: C. It acts as a foreign key. Explanation: Option C is correct because a foreign key is a field in one table that references the primary key of another table. Product underscore ID in the orders table links back to the product table's primary key to create a relationship. Option A is incorrect because product underscore ID is the primary key only in the product table, not in the orders table. A column can serve as a primary key only in the table where it uniquely identifies each record. Option B is incorrect because a composite key combines multiple columns together to create a unique identifier within one table. A single column that references another table's primary key is a foreign key, not a composite key. Option D is incorrect because metadata provides descriptive information about data, such as file details or data descriptions. Product underscore ID in the orders table is a structural key creating table relationships, not descriptive information. This one tests whether you understand how the same column can play different roles in different tables. A product table uses product underscore ID as its primary key. It uniquely identifies every product. An orders table also has a product underscore ID column, but it's there to link each order back to the correct product. When product underscore ID appears in the orders table, it acts as a foreign key. A foreign key is simply a field in one table that references the primary key of another table. It creates the relationship between the two. Product underscore ID is only a primary key in the product table, not in orders. A composite key is multiple columns combined to form a unique identifier. That's not what's happening with a single reference column. A metadata describes data characteristics, not table relationships. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a column appears in two tables and it's the primary key in one, it's a foreign key in the other. That's the pattern to recognize. Quick recall hook. Same column, different table, =, foreign key. 14. A company stores the same customer address in 5 different tables, causing frequent update errors whenever an address changes. A database administrator recommends reorganizing the data to eliminate this redundancy and improve accuracy. Which database concept specifically addresses this structural problem? A. Data transformation. B. Data replication. C. Data interoperability. D. Normalization. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, D. Normalization. Explanation. Option D is correct because normalization organizes data in a relational database by creating proper tables and establishing relationships between them. Its primary purpose is eliminating data redundancy, increasing integrity, and reducing complexity. Option A is incorrect because data transformation changes the format, structure, or values of existing data for easier analysis. It does not address the structural problem of the same data being stored redundantly across multiple database tables. Option B is incorrect because data replication is the process of intentionally storing data in multiple locations. This is actually the opposite of what the company needs, since replication increases redundancy rather than eliminating it. Option C is incorrect because data interoperability is the ability of different data systems to connect and share data openly. While useful for system communication, it does not fix the internal redundancy problem within one database. A company stores the same customer address in 5 different tables. Every time an address changes, they need to update it in 5 places. Miss one, and now the data contradicts itself. That's a redundancy problem. And the fix is normalization. Normalization is the process of organizing data in a relational database by creating proper tables and relationships between them. The goal is to eliminate redundancy, increase data integrity, and reduce complexity. Store the address once in a customer table, then reference it with foreign keys everywhere else. Data transformation changes formats or values for analysis. It doesn't fix structural redundancy. Data replication is actually the opposite of what you want here. It intentionally copies data to multiple locations. Data interoperability is about different systems sharing data with each other, not about fixing duplication inside one database. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes the same data stored in multiple tables causing update errors, normalization is the answer. Quick recall hook. Normalization =, no more redundancy. 15. A school database tracks student enrollments using both student_ID and course_ID together to uniquely identify each enrollment record. Neither column alone can guarantee uniqueness since students take multiple courses. What type of key is formed by combining these 2 columns? A. Foreign key. B. Composite key. C. Administrative key. D. Metadata key. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, B. Composite key. Explanation. Option B is correct because a composite key is a primary key constructed from multiple columns of a table. Using student_ID and course_ID together creates a unique identifier when neither individual column alone guarantees uniqueness. Option A is incorrect because a foreign key references the primary key of another table to create relationships between tables. While student_ID and course_ID may reference other tables, their combined use as a unique identifier makes them composite. Option C is incorrect because administrative key is not a recognized database key type in standard database terminology. Administrative metadata describes the technical source of digital assets, not how records are uniquely identified. Option D is incorrect because metadata key is not a standard database term. Metadata refers to data about data such as file descriptions or creation dates, and it has no connection to how database records are uniquely identified. A school database needs to track student enrollments. The problem is that student_ID alone can't uniquely identify an enrollment because one student takes multiple courses. And course_ID alone doesn't work either because many students take the same course. So you combine them. Student_ID plus course_ID together form a unique pair for each enrollment record. That combination is called a composite key. A composite key is a primary key built from multiple columns of a table. Neither column alone guarantees uniqueness, but together they do. A foreign key references another table's primary key. That's about linking tables, not about combining columns for uniqueness within one table. Administrative key isn't a real database term. Neither is metadata key. Metadata is data about data, not a key type. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question says no single column can be unique, but two columns together can, that's a composite key. Quick recall hook. Composite equals sign combined columns, one key. 16. A healthcare company collects patient data and plans to share it with a research partner. Before sharing, the company removes all names, social security numbers, and medical record identifiers from the dataset to protect patient identity. Which data ethics practice is the company performing? A. Data anonymization. B. Data transformation. C. Data interoperability. D. Data replication. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, A. Data anonymization. Explanation. Option A is correct because data anonymization involves blanking, hashing, or masking personally identifiable information from datasets. Removing names, social security numbers, and medical identifiers protects patient privacy before sharing with external partners. Option B is incorrect because data transformation changes the format or structure of data to make it more useful for analysis purposes. Removing personal identifiers is a privacy protection measure and not a structural or formatting change. Option C is incorrect because data interoperability refers to the ability of different systems to connect and share data. The described scenario focuses on removing personal information for privacy protection, not on system compatibility. Option D is incorrect because data replication means storing data in multiple locations for redundancy purposes. The company is stripping personal identifiers for privacy protection, which is a completely different process from copying data elsewhere. A healthcare company is about to share patient data with a research partner. Before handing it over, they strip out all names, social security numbers, and medical record identifiers. This is data anonymization, the process of removing personally identifiable information from datasets to protect privacy. Common techniques include blanking, hashing, or masking personal details. Healthcare and financial data are the two most sensitive types, which is why they typically go through de-identification before sharing. Data transformation is about changing formats or structures for analysis, not about removing personal info. Data interoperability is about systems connecting and sharing data. It's a compatibility concept, not a privacy one. Data replication copies data to multiple locations, which is completely unrelated to stripping out identifiers. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes removing names, SSNs, or any personally identifiable information before sharing, that's data anonymization. Quick recall hook. Anonymization equals sign anonymous. Remove the name, remove the identity. 17. An analyst evaluates a dataset and needs to verify its trustworthiness before using it for a major business decision. Using the ROCCC framework, the analyst specifically checks whether the data was recently collected and is still relevant to present conditions. Which ROCCC criterion is being applied? A. Reliable. B. Comprehensive. C. Current. D. Cited. Do you know the answer? Correct answer C, current. Explanation. Option C is correct because the current criterion in ROCCCC evaluates whether data is recent and relevant to the task at hand. The usefulness of data decreases as time passes, so checking for recency is a currency evaluation. Option A is incorrect because the reliable criterion checks whether the data source is trustworthy and accurate overall. Checking specifically for recency and relevance to current conditions falls under the current criterion rather than general reliability. Option B is incorrect because the comprehensive criterion evaluates whether the data contains all critical information needed to answer a question. Checking whether data is recently collected addresses currency, not completeness of the data set. Option D is incorrect because the cited criterion asks about the credibility of who created the dataset and their affiliated organization. Evaluating whether data was recently collected and remains relevant addresses the current criterion instead. ROCCC is a 5-point framework for evaluating data sources: reliable, original, comprehensive, current, and cited. This question zeroes in on the current criterion. The analyst checks whether the data was recently collected and still relevant to present conditions. That's currency. Data loses usefulness over time. What was accurate last year might be outdated today. Reliable checks whether the source itself is trustworthy and accurate overall. That's about the source's reputation, not when the data was collected. Comprehensive asks whether the data contains all the critical information you need to answer your question. Recency is a separate concern from completeness. Cited is about credibility. Who created the dataset, what organization they belong to, and when it was last refreshed. It's about provenance, not timeliness. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question mentions checking whether data is recent and still relevant. That's the current criterion of ROC, quick recall hook, current =sign clock is ticking. Is the data still fresh? 18. A social media company processes user data through an algorithm that most users cannot understand or explain in any way. Users have no insight into how their personal data generates personalized advertisements shown to them. Which aspect of data ethics is this company most clearly violating? A. Ownership. B. Consent. C. Currency. D. Transaction transparency. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, D. Transaction transparency. Explanation: option D is correct because transaction transparency requires that all data processing activities and algorithms should be completely explainable and understood by individuals who provide their personal data for company processing purposes. Option A is incorrect because ownership addresses who has primary control over the raw data individuals provide. While related to broader ethics, the specific issue described is about algorithmic explainability and processing transparency, not data ownership. Option B is incorrect because consent involves knowing how and why data will be used before agreeing to provide it. The scenario describes a lack of algorithmic transparency during ongoing processing, which goes beyond the initial consent agreement. Option C is incorrect because currency refers to individual awareness of financial transactions resulting from personal data use. While advertisements generate revenue, the core described issue is that users cannot understand the processing algorithms. This question is about transaction transparency, one of the 6 aspects of data ethics. A social media company runs user data through an algorithm that nobody outside the company can understand. Users have zero insight into how their data generates the personalized ads they see. That's a violation of transaction transparency. Transaction transparency requires that all data processing activities and algorithms be completely explainable and understood by the individuals who provide their data. Ownership is about who has primary control over raw data. While related to broader ethics, the specific problem here is that users can't understand the algorithm, not that they lack control. Consent means knowing how and why your data will be used before you agree to provide it. This scenario is about ongoing processing opacity, which goes beyond the initial agreement. Currency deals with awareness of financial transactions generated from personal data. While ads do generate revenue, the core issue is algorithmic explainability. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes algorithms or data processing that users cannot understand or explain, that's a transaction transparency violation. Quick recall hook: transparency equals sign they should see through the process. 19. A government agency publishes a dataset online, but restricts who can redistribute or combine it with other datasets for research purposes. A researcher wants to use it for a community project, but cannot share results publicly. Which requirement of open data does this restriction violate? A. Availability and access. B. Reuse and redistribution. C. Data anonymization. D. Data governance. Do you know the answer? Correct answer: B. Reuse and redistribution. Explanation: option B is correct because open data must be provided under terms that allow reuse and redistribution, including the ability to combine it with other datasets. Restricting redistribution directly violates this core open data standard. Option A is incorrect because availability and access require data to be available as a complete whole to the public. The dataset is already published online, so availability is met. But the violation specifically concerns redistribution and reuse restrictions. Option C is incorrect because data anonymization is the process of removing personally identifiable information from datasets. The question describes restrictions on sharing and redistribution rights, which is unrelated to the anonymization process entirely. Option D is incorrect because data governance is a process for formally managing a company's data assets internally. The scenario discusses open data redistribution restrictions placed on the public, not internal organizational data management procedures. Open data has 3 requirements, and all 3 must be met. The data must be available and accessible as a complete data set. It must allow reuse and redistribution, including combining it with other datasets, and it must allow universal participation. Anyone can use it without discrimination. This question describes a government dataset that's published online but restricts who can redistribute or combine it with other data. A researcher can't share their findings publicly. That violates the reuse and redistribution requirement. Availability and access is already satisfied. The dataset is published online and accessible. Data anonymization is about removing personal identifiers, which is unrelated to redistribution rights. Data governance is about internal management of a company's data assets, not about public sharing restrictions on open data. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. If a question describes open data with restrictions on sharing or combining with other datasets, look for reuse and redistribution as the violated standard. Quick recall hook: open data means open to reuse and redistribution. 20. A financial services firm collects customer data and sells it to third parties without informing customers about the scale of revenue generated from these transactions. Customers remain unaware that their personal data produces significant profits for the company. Which data ethics aspect is violated? A. Currency. B. Openness. C. Privacy. D. Ownership. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer: A. Currency. Explanation: option A is correct because the currency aspect of data ethics states that individuals should be aware of financial transactions resulting from their personal data use and should understand the full scale of those transactions. Option B is incorrect because openness refers to free access, usage, and sharing of data as part of open data standards. The described violation specifically concerns individual awareness of financial transactions, not public data sharing practices. Option C is incorrect because privacy focuses on protecting personal information and activity during data transactions from unauthorized access. While related, the specific violation described concerns financial transaction awareness, not unauthorized data access. Option D is incorrect because ownership gives individuals primary control over how their raw data is used, processed, and shared. The described issue is specifically about financial transparency and awareness, not about who controls the underlying data. This question targets the currency aspect of data ethics. And no, it's not about money in the traditional sense. A financial services firm collects customer data and sells it to third parties. Customers have no idea their personal data is generating significant profits for the company. That violates the currency principle. Currency and data ethics states that individuals should be aware of financial transactions resulting from the use of their personal data and should understand the scale of those transactions. Openness is about free access, usage, and sharing of data as part of open data standards. The problem here is about personal financial awareness, not public data sharing. Privacy focuses on protecting personal information from unauthorized access. While selling data raises privacy concerns, the specific violation described is about financial transparency. Ownership gives individuals primary control over their raw data. The issue here is specifically about not knowing the money being made, not about who controls the data itself. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes companies profiting from personal data without informing the individual about those financial transactions, that's a currency violation. Quick recall hook. Currency = cash from your data, and you should know about it. 21. An analyst discovers that a customer database has been copied across 3 different servers, and during the most recent copy, several records were accidentally altered. The altered records now display incorrect phone numbers for affected customers. Which threat to data integrity best describes this situation? A. Data manipulation. B. Data transfer. C. Data replication. D. Sampling bias. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, C. Data replication. Explanation: option C is correct because data replication is the process of storing data in multiple locations. When data is copied across multiple servers and records become altered during this process, replication directly threatens overall data integrity. Option A is incorrect because data manipulation intentionally changes data to make it more organized and easier to read. The scenario describes accidental alteration during copying between servers, not deliberate reorganization of the database records. Option B is incorrect because data transfer is copying data from a storage device to memory or between computers. While similar, the question specifically describes storing copies across multiple servers, which matches the definition of data replication. Option D is incorrect because sampling bias occurs when a sample does not represent the full population. The described issue involves data being corrupted during the copying process between servers, not problems with how a sample was selected. Let's dig into a common threat to data integrity: data replication gone wrong. An analyst finds that a customer database was copied across 3 different servers. During the most recent copy, several records got accidentally altered. Now those records show incorrect phone numbers. The culprit here is data replication. Data replication is the process of storing data in multiple locations, and every time you replicate, there's a risk that something gets changed or corrupted along the way. Data manipulation is different, as that's when you intentionally change data to organize it or make it easier to read. Nothing intentional happened here. Data transfer is copying data from a device to memory or between computers. It sounds similar, but the question specifically describes multiple copies stored across servers, which is replication. Sampling bias doesn't apply at all. That's about selecting a non-representative sample for a study, not about corrupted records on servers. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes data being copied to multiple locations and getting altered during that process, that's a data replication threat to integrity. Quick recall hook. Replication = repeated copies, risk of corruption. 22. A sales team enters customer data manually into a spreadsheet over several months. Over time, the same customer appears 3 times with slightly different name spellings, and several entries have blank email fields. Which term best describes data containing these types of quality problems? A. Clean data. B. Proxy data. C. Structured data. D. Dirty data. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, D. Dirty data. Explanation: option D is correct because dirty data is data that is incomplete, incorrect, or irrelevant to the problem being solved. Duplicate entries with spelling variations and blank fields are textbook examples of common dirty data problems. Option A is incorrect because clean data is complete, correct, and relevant to the problem being solved. A spreadsheet with duplicate customer names, spelling variations, and missing email fields clearly does not meet the standard for clean data. Option B is incorrect because proxy data is substitute data used when the actual needed data is unavailable. The scenario describes quality problems within an existing dataset, not the use of a stand-in or substitute data source for analysis. Option C is incorrect because structured data refers to data organized in rows and columns. A spreadsheet is structured by format, but the question specifically asks about the quality of the data content, which has duplicates and missing values. This one is about recognizing dirty data, and the scenario is painfully common. A sales team enters customer data manually over several months. Over time, the same customer appears 3 times with slightly different name spellings, and several entries have blank email fields, duplicates, spelling inconsistencies, missing values. These are textbook dirty data problems. Dirty data is data that's incomplete, incorrect, or irrelevant to the problem you're trying to solve. The number one cause of poor quality data? Human error. Manual entry practically guarantees it over time. Clean data is the opposite, complete, correct, and relevant. This spreadsheet clearly isn't that. Proxy data is substitute data you use when the real data isn't available, not what's happening here. Structured data just describes the format of rows and columns. The spreadsheet is structured, sure, but the question is about the quality of what's inside. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. Duplicates, misspellings, blank fields, and inconsistent formatting. Any of these point straight to dirty data. Quick recall hook. Dirty data = duplicates, incomplete, incorrect. 23. A data analyst is cleaning a database table and finds that a text column contains extra leading and trailing spaces, causing mismatches when joining tables together. The analyst needs a skewl function that removes these unwanted spaces without changing the actual content of the text. Which function should be used? A. Trim. B. Cast. C. Concat. D. Subster. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. Trim. Explanation. Option A is correct because trim removes leading, trailing, and repeated spaces from text data in SQL. This function cleans up whitespace issues without altering the actual text content and fixes join mismatches caused by spaces. Option B is incorrect because cast converts data from one data type to another, such as changing text to numbers or floats. It does not remove spaces from text strings, so it would not solve the whitespace mismatch problem described. Option C is incorrect because concat joins multiple text strings together to create new combined text strings. Adding strings together would not remove unwanted spaces and could actually introduce additional formatting issues in the data. Option D is incorrect because substr returns a limited number of characters from a longer text string to create substrings. It extracts portions of text rather than removing spaces, making it unsuitable for cleaning whitespace problems. If you've ever had a table join fail for no obvious reason, extra spaces in text columns are often the invisible culprit. The analyst here has a text column with leading and trailing spaces causing mismatches. The fix is the trim function. Trim removes leading, trailing, and repeated spaces from text data without changing the actual content. It's one of the most used cleaning functions in SQL. Cast converts data types, like turning text into numbers. That won't help with spaces. Concat joins text strings together to make new combined strings. Adding strings together would make the problem worse, not better. Substr extracts a portion of characters from a longer string. It pulls text apart rather than cleaning it up. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. Whenever a question mentions unwanted spaces, whitespace, or join mismatches caused by spacing, trim is the answer. Quick recall hook. Trim =, trims the space junk away. 24. A database contains a product column where prices are stored as text strings instead of numeric values. An analyst needs to convert these text entries into a proper numeric data type, so the column can be used correctly for sorting and comparison operations. Which SQL function handles this conversion? A. Coalesce, B. Cast, C. Trim, D. Concat. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, B. Cast. Explanation: option B is correct because cast converts data from one data type to another in SQL. When prices are stored as text strings, cast can change them into a numeric data type so they work correctly for sorting and comparisons. Option A is incorrect because coalesce returns the first non-null value from a list and is useful for handling missing data entries. It does not convert data types, so it cannot change text formatted prices into usable numeric values. Option C is incorrect because trim removes extra spaces from text strings in a database. While useful for cleaning whitespace, it does not change the underlying data type from text to numeric, which is what this analyst needs. Option D is incorrect because concat joins multiple text strings together into one combined text string. This function adds text pieces together rather than converting them, so it cannot transform text formatted prices into numeric values. Here's a scenario you'll hit more often than you'd expect. Prices stored as text instead of numbers. The analyst needs to convert text formatted prices into a proper numeric data type, so sorting and comparisons actually work. The answer is cast. Cast converts data from one type to another in SQL. Text to numbers, numbers to floats, strings to dates. Cast handles it all. Coalesce returns the first non-null value from a list. It's useful for dealing with missing data, but it doesn't change data types. Trim removes spaces from text. Helpful for cleaning, but it still leaves the data as text. The type stays the same. Concat joins strings together. That gives you more text, not a number. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes data stored in the wrong type, text as numbers, numbers as text. Cast is the function that fixes it. Quick recall hook. Cast =, change a strings type. 25. After completing a data cleaning project, an analyst must confirm that all changes were executed properly and the resulting dataset is accurate and reliable before presenting final findings to stakeholders. Which process should the analyst perform at this critical final stage before the presentation? A. Data transformation. B. Data merging. C. Verification. D. Normalization. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, C. Verification. Explanation: option C is correct because verification is the process of confirming that data cleaning efforts were well executed and the resulting data is accurate and reliable. This step should always happen before presenting any findings to stakeholders. Option A is incorrect because data transformation changes the format, structure, or values of data to make it more useful for analysis. This is a cleaning step itself, not the confirmation process that validates whether previous cleaning was done correctly. Option B is incorrect because data merging combines two or more data sets into a single unified data set. Merging is a data preparation activity, not a confirmation step that validates the quality and accuracy of completed data cleaning work. Option D is incorrect because normalization organizes data in a relational database by creating proper tables and establishing relationships. It reduces structural redundancy in databases, but does not confirm whether data cleaning efforts were actually successful. You finished cleaning your data. Now what? You verify it. Verification is the process of confirming that your data cleaning efforts were executed properly and that the resulting dataset is accurate and reliable. It's the last quality gate before you present anything to stakeholders. Data transformation changes formats or values. That's part of the cleaning process itself, not the check that comes after. Data merging combines multiple datasets into one. That's a preparation step, not a confirmation step. Normalization organizes database tables to reduce redundancy. That's structural work, not a quality review of what you cleaned. Verification sits at the end of the pipeline. You look back at the business problem, confirm your project goal, and check that the data supports both. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question mentions confirming accuracy after cleaning and before presenting to stakeholders, that's verification. Quick recall hook. Verification =, verify before you present. 26. A data analyst examines a company photo library and needs to find images taken at a specific geographic location during a particular month. The analyst searches using tags showing creation dates and GPS coordinates attached to each image file. Which type of metadata contains this kind of identifying information? A. Structural metadata. B. Administrative metadata. C. Normalization metadata. D. Descriptive metadata. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, D. Descriptive metadata. Explanation. Option D is correct because descriptive metadata describes a piece of data and can be used to identify it at a later point in time. Tags like creation date, geolocation, and file descriptions all fall under descriptive metadata. Option A is incorrect because structural metadata indicates how data is organized and whether it belongs to one or more data collections. Tags describing location and date identify data content rather than its organizational structure within a system. Option B is incorrect because administrative metadata indicates the technical source of a digital asset, such as file permissions and access control settings. Creation dates and GPS coordinates serve an identifying purpose rather than a technical source role. Option C is incorrect because normalization metadata is not a recognized metadata type in standard data analytics terminology. The three common types are descriptive, structural, and administrative, and this fabricated term does not fit any of them. An analyst needs to find specific photos from a company library using tags like creation dates and GPS coordinates. These tags help identify which photos were taken where and when. That's descriptive metadata. Descriptive metadata describes a piece of data and can be used to identify it later. Think of it as the who, what, when, and where of a data asset. Titles, dates, geolocation, tags, and descriptions all fall here. Structural metadata tells you how data is organized and whether it belongs to one or more collections. That's about organization, not identification. Administrative metadata covers the technical source, file permissions, who can access or edit, and system details. The question is about finding and identifying content, not managing access rights. Normalization metadata isn't a real term. The three standard types are descriptive, structural, and administrative. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question mentions using tags, dates, locations, or descriptions to identify and find data, that's descriptive metadata. Quick recall hook. Descriptive equals sign describes the data so you can find it. 27. A database administrator checks file permissions and access controls to determine which team members can modify a sensitive financial dataset stored on a company server. The administrator reviews technical source information about the digital asset. Which metadata type provides this information? A. Administrative metadata. B. Descriptive metadata. C. Structural metadata. D. Conceptual metadata. Correct. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, A. Administrative metadata. Explanation: option A is correct because administrative metadata indicates the technical source of a digital asset, including details like file permissions and who can access or update a resource. This directly matches what the administrator is reviewing. Option B is incorrect because descriptive metadata helps identify data using elements like titles, dates, tags, and descriptions. Checking file permissions and access controls involves technical administration, not content identification or description. Option C is incorrect because structural metadata indicates how a piece of data is organized and whether it belongs to one or more data collections. File permissions relate to technical access controls, not data organization or collection membership. Option D is incorrect because conceptual metadata is not a recognized type within the three common metadata categories. The standard types taught in data analytics are descriptive, structural, and administrative, making this option a fabricated term. A database administrator checks file permissions and access control LUDs to see which team members can modify a sensitive financial data set. This is technical source information about a digital asset, and that falls under administrative metadata. Administrative metadata tells you the technical details about who can access, edit, or manage a digital resource. File permissions are the classic example. Descriptive metadata helps you identify data through titles, dates, tags, and descriptions. That's about content identification, not access control. Structural metadata describes how data is organized, whether it's part of one or more collections. That's about structure, not permissions. Conceptual metadata isn't a real category. Stick with the three standard types: descriptive, structural, administrative. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes file permissions, access controls, or technical source information, administrative metadata is the answer. Quick recall hook: administrative =sign admin access and permissions. 28. A company's data team struggles because analysts across departments store files differently, use inconsistent naming formats, and cannot easily locate datasets created by other teams. A manager wants metadata to solve this problem. Which specific benefit of metadata directly addresses these organizational inconsistencies? A. Data interoperability. B. Statistical significance. C. Consistency. D. Anonymization. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, C. Consistency. Explanation: option C is correct because when data is uniform and consistent, analysts can easily find and organize tables and files, categorize data following consistent formats, and efficiently store and access data across the organization. Option A is incorrect because data interoperability refers to the ability of different data systems and services to openly connect and share data. The described problem concerns internal organizational inconsistency, not cross-system data sharing capabilities. Option B is incorrect because statistical significance determines whether results are due to random chance or represent a real effect. Organizational file storage inconsistencies are a data management problem, not a statistical analysis concern at all. Option D is incorrect because anonymization removes personally identifiable information from datasets for privacy protection purposes. The described issue is about inconsistent file organization and naming conventions, not about protecting personal identity information. Different departments store files differently, use inconsistent naming, and can't find each other's datasets. Sound familiar? This is a consistency problem, and metadata solves it. When data is uniform and consistent, it becomes organized. Analysts can find tables and files easily. It becomes classified. Following a standard format helps with cleaning and processing. It gets stored efficiently across repositories, and it's easily accessed by users, applications, and systems. That's the consistency benefit of metadata. Data interoperability is about different systems connecting and sharing data across platforms. The problem here is internal disorganization, not cross-system sharing. Statistical significance determines whether results are due to chance. That's a statistical analysis concept, not a file management one. Anonymization removes personal identifiers for privacy. That has nothing to do with inconsistent file storage. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes inconsistent naming, disorganized files, or difficulty finding datasets across teams, the answer is consistency through metadata. Quick recall hook, consistency =, same format, easy to find. 29. An analyst needs to combine customer data from 3 different internal systems for a quarterly report. To find where each dataset lives, how its tables are structured, and who last accessed each system, the analyst consults a centralized storage location designed specifically for this purpose. What is this centralized resource called? A. Data warehouse. B. Relational database. C. CSV file. D. Metadata repository. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, D. Metadata repository. Explanation: option D is correct because metadata repositories are specialized databases created to store and manage metadata. They describe the state and location of data, the structure of tables, and who accessed the data logs. Option A is incorrect because a data warehouse stores large volumes of actual business data for reporting and analysis. The described resource stores information about where data lives and how it is structured, not the business data itself. Option B is incorrect because a relational database contains related tables connected through key relationships for data storage and querying. The analyst is looking for a centralized guide to find data across systems, not a data storage system. Option C is incorrect because a CSV file is a simple comma-separated file format used for storing tabular data. It cannot serve as a centralized resource that tracks data locations, table structures, and access logs across multiple systems. An analyst needs to combine customer data from 3 different internal systems. To do that, the analyst needs to know where each dataset lives, how the tables are structured, and who last accessed each system. There's a centralized location built exactly for this. It's called a metadata repository. Metadata repositories are specialized databases designed to store and manage metadata. They describe the state and location of data, the structure of tables, and access logs. They bring multiple sources together for analysis. A data warehouse stores large volumes of actual business data, not information about that data. A relational database holds data in connected tables, useful for storage and querying, but it's not a guide to finding data across systems. A CSV file is a simple file format for tabular data. It can't serve as a centralized reference tracking locations, structures, and access. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes a centralized resource for finding where data is, how it's structured, and who accessed it, metadata repository. Quick recall hook. Metadata repository =, map to your data. 30. A company discovers that different departments handle data security, privacy, and quality standards in contradictory ways. Some teams share sensitive customer data freely, while others restrict all access completely. Management wants a formal process to create unified standards for managing all data assets. Which concept specifically addresses this need? A. Data governance. B. Data transformation. C. Data modeling. D. Data replication. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. Data governance. Explanation. Option A is correct because data governance is a process to ensure the formal management of a company's data assets. It helps manage issues related to data security, privacy, integrity, usability, and internal and external data flows. Option B is incorrect because data transformation changes the format, structure, or values of data to make it more useful for analysis. The company needs unified management standards across departments, not changes to data formats or structures. Option C is incorrect because data modeling creates visual diagrams representing how data is organized and structured within systems. The described problem requires unified management policies and standards, not visual representations of data organization. Option D is incorrect because data replication stores data in multiple locations for redundancy or access purposes. The issue described concerns conflicting departmental policies on data handling, not the process of copying data across storage systems. Different departments in a company handle data security, privacy, and quality standards in completely contradictory ways. Some share sensitive data freely, others lock everything down. Management wants a formal process to create unified standards for all data assets. That's data governance. Data governance is a process for the formal management of a company's data assets. It covers data security, privacy, integrity, usability, and both internal and external data flows. It creates the rules everyone follows. Data transformation changes format or values for analysis. That's hands-on data work, not organizational policy. Data modeling creates visual diagrams of how data is organized. That helps with structure and design, not with unifying management standards. Data replication stores copies across locations. The problem here is conflicting policies, not where data is physically stored. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes conflicting data standards, policies, or management practices across an organization, data governance is the answer. Quick recall hook: governance = government over your data. 31. A data analyst writes a SQL query to retrieve only German customers from a large international customer database. The analyst needs to specify which table to pull from and limit results to one country only. Which combination of SQL clauses correctly structures this type of filtered data retrieval? A. Update and insert into. B. Delete and trim. C. Select from where. D. Concat and coalesce. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, C. Select from where. Explanation. Option C is correct because select from where is the standard SQL structure for pulling filtered data from a table. Select chooses columns, from identifies the table, and where applies conditions like filtering by country. Option A is incorrect because update changes existing data values in a database, and insert into adds new records to a table. Neither clause retrieves or filters existing data from a table, which is what the analyst needs to accomplish. Option B is incorrect because delete removes data from a database and trim removes extra spaces from text strings. These are data modification and cleaning functions, not tools for retrieving and filtering records from a database table. Option D is incorrect because concat joins text strings together and coalesce returns the first non-null value in a list. Both are data transformation functions that do not provide the filtering and retrieval capabilities described in the scenario. A data analyst needs to pull only German customers from a large international database. To do this, the analyst specifies which table to use and limits results to one country. The correct SQL structure is select from where. Select chooses the columns you want. From tells School which table to pull from. Where filters the results. In this case, where country equals Germany. That's the standard retrieval with filter pattern. Update and insert into are for changing existing data and adding new records. Neither retrieves or filters data. Delete removes records and trim clean spaces from text. Those are modification and cleaning tools, not retrieval tools. Concat joins strings and coalesce handles null values. Those are data transformation functions. They don't filter or retrieve records from a table. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question asks about pulling specific data from a table with a condition, select from where is the structure you need. Quick recall hook. Select from where =, pick, from where filter. 32. A new analyst joins a team and notices that all SQL queries use uppercase for keywords like select and from, while column names use lowercase with underscores between words such as total_sales and customer_ID. Which naming convention is being applied to these multi-word column names? A. Camel case. B. Snake case. C. Pascal case. D. Boolean case. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, B. Snake case. Explanation: option B is correct because snake case uses lowercase letters with underscores separating each word in multi-word names. Column names like total_sales and customer_ID follow this convention, which is a SQL best practice for readable column names. Option A is incorrect because camel case capitalizes the first letter of each word after the first, creating names like total sales. The described column names use underscores and lowercase throughout, which matches snake case rather than camel case formatting. Option C is incorrect because Pascal case capitalizes the first letter of every word, including the first, producing names like total sales. This convention is typically recommended for table names, not for column names that should use lowercase or snake case. Option D is incorrect because Boolean case is not a recognized naming convention in SQL or programming. Boolean refers to a data type with only two values like true or false, and it has no connection to how database columns are named. A new analyst notices the team uses uppercase for SQL keywords like select and from, while column names use lowercase with underscores, total_sales, customer_ID. That underscore separated lowercase format is called snake case. Snake case is a SQL best practice for column names. It keeps things readable and consistent, especially for multi-word names. Camel case capitalizes the first letter of each word after the first, like total sales. That's used for table names sometimes, but not for column naming best practices. Pascal case capitalizes every word including the first, like total sales, also used for table names. Boolean case doesn't exist as a naming convention. Boolean is a data type with true or false values. It has nothing to do with how you name things. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. Lowercase with underscores between words means snake case. On the exam, if column names look like this underscore format, pick snake case. Quick recall hook. Snake case =, slithers underscore with underscores. 33. An analyst needs to create unique product identifiers by combining the product name and color columns from a database table into a single text string. This combined string will help distinguish between products of different colors that currently share identical product names. Which SQL function accomplishes this? A. Trim. B. Cast. C. Subster. D. Concat. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, D. Concat. Explanation: option D is correct because concat adds strings together to create new text strings that can be used as unique keys. Combining product name and color produces a unique identifier that distinguishes products sharing the same name. Option A is incorrect because trim removes leading, trailing, and repeated spaces from text data. While useful for cleaning text, it cannot combine separate columns into a single unified text string to create a new unique identifier. Option B is incorrect because cast converts data from one data type to another, such as changing text to numeric or float values. It does not join multiple text columns together to produce a new combined text string for identification purposes. Option C is incorrect because substr extracts a limited number of characters from a longer text string to create smaller substrings. It pulls portions from existing text rather than combining two separate columns into one unified new string. An analyst needs to create unique product identifiers by combining product name and color into a single text string. Products with the same name but different colors currently look identical in the system. The solution is concat. Concat adds strings together to create new text strings that work as unique keys. Combine the product name with the color, and now you can tell widget red from widget blue. Trim removes spaces from text. Useful for cleaning, but it doesn't combine anything. Cast converts data types. Text to numbers, for example. It doesn't join columns together. Substar pulls a portion from an existing string. It breaks text apart instead of building something new. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes combining two or more text columns into one string, especially for creating unique identifiers, concat is the function. Quick recall hook, concat =, combine text, create keys. 34. An analyst runs calculations on a database column that contains several missing values recorded as nulls. The null entries cause errors in the output because arithmetic operations fail when they encounter missing data. Which SQL function specifically handles null values by returning the first non-null value instead? A. Coalesce, B. Distinct, C. Length, D. Trim. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. Coalesce. Explanation: option A is correct, because coalesce returns the first non-null value in a list and can skip null entries during calculations. This keeps math correct by substituting non-null values where missing data exists in the column. Option B is incorrect because distinct removes duplicate entries from query results in a select statement. It does not handle null values or provide substitute values when calculations encounter missing data entries in a database column. Option C is incorrect because length returns the number of characters in a text string. It measures text length rather than handling null values, and it would actually fail or return null itself when encountering a missing data entry. Option D is incorrect because trim removes extra spaces from text strings in a database. While useful for cleaning whitespace problems, it does not provide any functionality for handling null values or substituting missing data during calculations. Null values are the silent saboteurs of calculations. An analyst runs math on a column, but several entries are null. Missing data. The arithmetic fails because operations can't handle missing values. The fix is coalesce. Coalesce returns the first non-null value in a list. It skips over nulls and keeps your calculations on track. If a value is missing, coalesce substitutes the next available non-null value instead of crashing. Distinct removes duplicate rows from query results. Useful for deduplication, but it doesn't handle nulls or substitute values during math. Length tells you how many characters are in a text string. It measures text length. It would actually fail on a null just like anything else. Trim strips spaces from text. Great for whitespace problems, but it does nothing for missing data. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question mentions null values causing calculation errors or needing to skip missing data, coalesce is the answer. Quick recall hook. Coalesce =, catches nulls, continues calculating. 35. A team lead reviews a colleague's SQL query and notices the code lacks any explanatory notes about its purpose or logic. The query is long, and other team members cannot understand its intent without asking the original author directly. Which SQL feature should be added to improve readability for other users? A. Foreign keys. B. Cast functions. C. Comments. D. Concat functions. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, C. Comments. Explanation. Option C is correct because SQL comments using double dashes for single lines or /* pairs for multiple lines help make code easier to read and maintain. They explain the purpose and logic of queries for other team members. Option A is incorrect because foreign keys create relationships between database tables by referencing primary keys in other tables. They serve a structural purpose in database design and have no capability to explain query logic or improve readability. Option B is incorrect because cast functions convert data from one type to another within NESQL queries. Adding data type conversions would not help other team members understand the purpose or reasoning behind the written query logic. Option D is incorrect because concat functions combine text strings together to create new unified strings. This string manipulation function does not serve any explanatory or documentation purpose that would help others understand query intent. A team lead reviews a colleague's SQL query and finds no explanatory notes anywhere. The query is long, and nobody else on the team can figure out what it does without asking the author directly. The fix is simple. Add comments. SQL comments use double dashes for single-line notes and /* pairs for multi-line blocks. They explain the purpose and logic of your code so other people can actually understand it. Comments are a readability feature, not a data function. Foreign keys create relationships between tables. They're structural database elements. They don't explain anything about query logic. Cast functions convert data types. Adding type conversions doesn't help anyone understand why the query exists. Concat joins text strings. That's a data manipulation function with zero documentation value. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes code that others can't understand, lacks explanation, or needs documentation, comments are the answer. Quick recall hook. Comments =sign code explanations for humans. 36. A startup company needs customer behavior data, but has no existing internal datasets to analyze. The company purchases a dataset from a marketing agency that originally collected the data directly from its own audience through surveys and focus groups. Which data classification best describes this purchased dataset? A. First-party data. B. Third-party data. C. Open data. D. Second-party data. Do you know the answer? Correct answer D. Second-party data. Explanation. Option D is correct because second-party data is collected by a group directly from its audience and then sold to another organization. The marketing agency collected data from its own audience and sold it, making it second-party data. Option A is incorrect because first-party data is collected by an individual or group using their own resources directly. The startup purchased this data from an external agency rather than collecting it internally, so it cannot be classified as first-party. Option B is incorrect because third-party data comes from outside sources who did not collect it directly from the original audience. The marketing agency did collect this data directly from its own audience, which makes it second-party rather than third-party. Option C is incorrect because open data must meet three standards: public availability, reuse and redistribution rights, and universal participation access. A purchased dataset with restricted access does not meet the open data requirements at all. A startup needs customer behavior data but has nothing internally. They purchase a dataset from a marketing agency that collected it directly from the agency's own audience through surveys and focus groups. The agency then sold it. That makes it second-party data. Second-party data is collected by a group directly from its own audience and then sold to someone else. The key distinction: the original collector had a direct relationship with the people they surveyed. First-party data means you collected it yourself using your own resources. The startup bought it from someone else, so it's not first-party. Third-party data comes from sources that didn't collect it directly. They aggregated it from various platforms without a direct relationship to the individuals. The agency here did collect it directly. Open data requires public availability, redistribution rights, and universal participation. A purchased dataset with restricted access doesn't qualify. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When data was collected directly from an audience by one organisation and then sold to another, that's second-party data. Quick recall hook. Second-party = second-hand, but collected directly by the seller. 37. A city planner needs quick insights about traffic patterns, but has no time to conduct a new study. The planner decides to use existing traffic records from the previous 5 years that are already stored in the city's transportation database. Which type of data best describes these pre-existing records? A. Historical data. B. Proxy data. C. Third-party data. And D. Unstructured data. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, A. Historical data. Explanation: option A is correct because historical data is data that already exists and can be used when immediate answers are needed, without time to collect new data. The city's stored traffic records from previous years are a clear example of this type. Option B is incorrect because proxy data is substitute data used when the actual needed data is completely unavailable. The city planner has direct access to real traffic records, so there is no need to use a stand-in or substitute data set. Option C is incorrect because third-party data comes from outside sources who did not collect it directly. The traffic records are internal city data, stored in the city's own transportation database, making them internal rather than third-party data. Option D is incorrect because unstructured data cannot be organised into rows and columns. Traffic records stored in a transportation database are organised in a structured tabular format, not unstructured like audio files or social media posts. A city planner needs quick traffic insights but has no time for a new study. The solution? Use the 5 years of traffic records already sitting in the city's transportation database. That's historical data. Data that already exists and can be used when you need answers fast. The study notes are clear on this. If you need an answer immediately, use historical data. Proxy data is a substitute used when the actual data you need isn't available at all. The planner has real traffic records, so there's no need for a stand-in. Third-party data comes from outside sources who didn't collect it directly. These records are internal city data, stored in the city's own system. Unstructured data can't be organised into rows and columns like audio or video files. Traffic records in a database are structured and tabular. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes needing quick answers using data that already exists, that's historical data. The keywords are already stored and no time to collect new data. Quick recall hook. Historical = history already happened, data's already there. 38. A researcher conducts personal interviews with 50 employees and distributes questionnaires to gather first-hand workplace satisfaction data for a company-wide study. No external sources or purchased datasets are involved in this data-gathering effort. Which data classification describes information gathered this way? A. Secondary data. B. External data. C. Primary data. D. Third-party data. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, C. Primary data. Explanation: option C is correct because primary data is collected by a researcher from first-hand sources, such as interviews and questionnaires conducted directly. The researcher personally gathered this data without relying on any external or purchased data sources. Option A is incorrect because secondary data is gathered by other people or from other existing research rather than collected first-hand. The researcher personally conducted the interviews and distributed questionnaires, making this a first-hand primary data collection effort. Option B is incorrect because external data lives outside an organization and is generated by outside sources. The researcher is collecting data internally within the company from its own employees, which makes this internal primary data collection. Option D is incorrect because third-party data is collected from outside sources who did not gather it directly from the original subjects. The researcher directly interviewed and surveyed employees personally, which is the opposite of third-party data collection. A researcher personally interviews 50 employees and distributes questionnaires to gather first-hand workplace satisfaction data. No external sources, no purchased data sets. Everything comes straight from the researcher's own effort. That's primary data. Primary data is collected by a researcher directly from first-hand sources. Interviews you conduct, surveys you distribute, questionnaires you hand out. All primary. Secondary data is gathered by other people or from existing research. The researcher here did everything personally, so it's not secondary. External data lives outside your organization, generated by outside sources. These interviews and surveys happened inside the company with its own employees. Third-party data is collected from outside sources who didn't gather it directly. The researcher had direct contact with every participant. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a researcher personally conducts interviews, surveys, or questionnaires, that's primary data. The keyword is first-hand. Quick recall hook. Primary =, personally collected first-hand. 39. A research team plans a nationwide health survey and uses an online sample size calculator before starting. The calculator requires 3 specific inputs to determine the minimum number of participants needed for statistically valid results. Which 3 inputs must the team provide to this calculator? A. Mean, median and mode. B. Margin of error, population size and confidence level. C. Primary key, foreign key and composite key. D. Descriptive, structural and administrative. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, B. Margin of error, population size and confidence. Explanation. Option B is correct because a sample size calculator requires 3 inputs: margin of error, population size and confidence level. These 3 values together determine the minimum number of participants needed to achieve statistically valid and representative results. Option A is incorrect because mean, median and mode are measures of central tendency used in statistical analysis of existing data. They are outputs of data analysis, not inputs required by a sample size calculator before data collection begins. Option C is incorrect because primary key, foreign key, and composite key are database structural elements used in relational database design. They have no connection to statistical sampling calculations or determining participant numbers for research surveys. Option D is incorrect because descriptive, structural, and administrative are the 3 types of metadata used in data management. These metadata categories describe data characteristics, not the statistical parameters needed for calculating appropriate sample sizes. Before launching a nationwide health survey, the research team needs to figure out how many participants they actually need. They pull up an online sample size calculator. That calculator needs 3 specific inputs: margin of error, population size, and confidence level. These 3 values together determine the minimum number of participants for statistically valid results. Margin of error tells you how much the sample results can differ from the true population result. Population size is the total number you're drawing your sample from. Confidence level is the probability that your sample accurately reflects the broader population. Most studies aim for 95%. Mean, median, and mode are measures of central tendency. Those are outputs of analysis, not inputs for calculating sample size. Primary key, foreign key, and composite key are database design elements. They have 0 connection to statistics. Descriptive, structural, and administrative are the three types of metadata, also unrelated to sample size calculations. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. Sample size calculator needs three inputs: margin of error, population size, and confidence level. Memorize those three. Quick recall hook: MPC margin, population, confidence. 40. A health clinic needs patient satisfaction data, but cannot survey its own patients due to time constraints. Instead, the clinic purchases consumer satisfaction data from a data broker who compiled it from various online platforms and sources without directly surveying any individuals themselves. Which data type is this? A. First-party data, B. Primary data, C. Second-party data, D. Third-party data. Do you know the answer? Correct answer: D. Third-party data. Explanation: option D is correct because third-party data is provided by outside sources who did not collect it directly from the original subjects. The data broker compiled information from various platforms without any direct relationship to the individuals surveyed. Option A is incorrect because first-party data is collected by an individual or group using their own resources directly. The clinic purchased externally compiled data rather than collecting any satisfaction information from its own patients or through its own efforts. Option B is incorrect because primary data is gathered first-hand by researchers directly from their sources through methods like interviews and surveys. The data broker aggregated existing data from online platforms rather than conducting any original first-hand research. Option C is incorrect because second-party data is collected by a group directly from its own audience and then sold. The data broker did not collect this data from their own audience, but instead aggregated it from multiple external online platforms. A health clinic can't survey its own patients, so it buys consumer satisfaction data from a data broker. The broker compiled this data from various online platforms and sources without directly surveying anyone themselves. The broker has no direct relationship with the individuals whose data they're selling. That's third-party data. Third-party data is provided by outside sources who didn't collect it directly from the original subjects. They aggregate from multiple platforms, scraping, compiling, packaging, and sell the bundle. First-party data is collected by you using your own resources. The clinic bought this externally. Primary data is gathered first-hand through interviews and direct research. The broker didn't do any first-hand research. Second-party data is collected directly from an audience by one organization and then sold. The broker didn't collect from their own audience. They pulled from various external platforms. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a data broker compiles data from multiple outside sources without any direct relationship to the individuals, that's third-party data. Quick recall hook: third-party = third-hand, no direct contact. 41. A bank protects sensitive customer account numbers by replacing them with randomly generated substitute values in its customer-facing application. The real account numbers are stored separately in a secure vault, and only authorized systems can map the substitutes back to the originals. Which security method is this? A. Tokenization. B. Encryption. C. Normalization. D. Data governance. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer: A. Tokenization. Explanation: option A is correct because tokenization replaces data elements with randomly generated tokens while storing original data in a separate secure location. Even if tokenized data is compromised, the original data remains safe elsewhere. Option B is incorrect because encryption uses a unique algorithm to alter data and make it unusable without knowing the specific algorithm key. Tokenization differs because it replaces data with random substitutes rather than algorithmically transforming the original values. Option C is incorrect because normalization organizes data in a relational database by creating tables and establishing relationships to reduce redundancy. It is a database design concept and has no connection to protecting sensitive customer information. Option D is incorrect because data governance is a process for formally managing a company's data assets, including security policies and data flows. It establishes rules and standards, but is not a specific technical method for protecting individual data values. Let's break down the difference between tokenization and encryption, because they both protect data, but in completely different ways. A bank replaces sensitive customer account numbers with randomly generated substitute values in its customer-facing application. The real account numbers are stored separately in a secure vault. Only authorized systems can map the substitutes back to the originals. That's tokenization. Tokenization swaps real data for random tokens and keeps the originals locked away in a separate location. Even if someone hacks the tokenized data, they get nothing useful. The original data is physically somewhere else. Encryption works differently. It uses an algorithm to scramble the actual data, and a key reverses that scramble. The data itself gets transformed, not replaced. Normalization is a database design process for organizing tables and reducing redundancy. It has nothing to do with security. Data governance sets policies and standards for managing data assets. It's an organizational framework, not a hands-on technique for protecting specific values. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes replacing data with random substitutes and storing originals separately, that's tokenization. If it describes scrambling data with an algorithm and a reversible key, that's encryption. Quick recall hook. Tokenization = token swap, originals stored elsewhere. 42. A company sends sensitive employee records to a remote office through an encrypted channel. The receiving office can only read the data after applying a specific decryption key that reverses the algorithm used during transmission. Which security concept does this two-way process of scrambling and unscrambling data represent? A. Tokenization. B. Version control. C. Encryption. D. Data anonymization. Do you know the answer? Correct answer. C. Encryption. Explanation: option C is correct because encryption uses a unique algorithm to alter data and make it unusable by unauthorized parties. The algorithm is saved as a key that can reverse the encryption, allowing authorized recipients to decrypt and read the data. Option A is incorrect because tokenization replaces data with randomly generated tokens and stores originals separately. Encryption transforms the actual data using an algorithm and a reversible key, which is fundamentally different from token substitution. Option B is incorrect because version control tracks changes made to files or code over time and allows users to revert to previous versions. It manages document history and collaboration, not the cryptographic protection of data during transmission. Option D is incorrect because data anonymization permanently removes personally identifiable information through blanking, hashing, or masking. Encryption is reversible with the correct key, while anonymization is intended to be a permanent one-way process. A company sends sensitive employee records to a remote office through an encrypted channel. The receiving office can only read the data after applying a specific decryption key that reverses the algorithm. Scramble on one end, unscramble on the other. That's encryption. Encryption uses a unique algorithm to alter data and make it unusable by anyone who doesn't have the key. The algorithm is saved as a key, and that key reverses the process. It's a two-way street. Lock and unlock. Tokenization replaces data with random tokens and stores originals separately. That's a swap, not a scramble. The question describes an algorithm-based transformation with a reversible key, which is encryption's signature. Version control tracks changes to files over time and lets you revert to previous versions. That's collaboration tooling, not data protection during transmission. Data anonymization permanently removes personal identifiers through blanking, hashing, or masking. The critical word is permanently. Encryption is reversible, Anonymization is not. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. Algorithm plus reversible key equals encryption. If the data can be unscrambled by an authorized party with the right key, that's always encryption. Quick recall hook. Encryption equals sign algorithm plus key equals sign lock and unlock. 43. A data team agrees that all project files must include the project name, creation date in YYYMMDD format, and a version number in every file name. This approach ensures that any team member can quickly locate and identify the correct file version. What is this standardized approach to organizing file names called? A. Data governance. B. Naming conventions. C. Normalization. D. Data modeling. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, B. Naming conventions. Explanation. Option B is correct because naming conventions are consistent guidelines that describe the content, date, or version of a file in its name, including project name, formatted date, and version number follows naming convention best practices exactly. Option A is incorrect because data governance is a broader process for formally managing all of a company's data assets and policies. Naming conventions are one specific practice within data organization, not the overarching governance framework for all data management. Option C is incorrect because normalization organizes data within relational databases by creating tables and reducing redundancy. The scenario describes how files are named on a file system, not how database tables are structured or related to each other. Option D is incorrect because data modeling creates visual diagrams showing how data is organized and structured in systems. File naming practices involve labeling files on a storage system, not creating visual representations of database structures and relationships. A data team agrees on a standard for all project file names, include the project name, creation date in YYYMDD format, and a version number. Every file follows the same pattern. Anyone on the team can find the right file in seconds. That's a naming convention. Naming conventions are consistent guidelines that describe the content, date, or version of a file in its name. The YYYMDD date format specifically follows the International Date Standard. It sorts chronologically and avoids confusion between date formats used in different countries. Data governance is the broader process for managing all of a company's data assets. Naming conventions are one piece of that puzzle, but the question asks about the specific practice of standardized file names, not the whole governance framework. Normalization is about organizing relational database tables and reducing redundancy. Files on a file system have nothing to do with database table design. Data modeling creates visual diagrams of how data is structured. That's about mapping data architecture, not labeling files. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes standardized file name structures with project names, dates, and versions, that's naming conventions. Quick recall hook. Naming conventions equal sign. Name it right. Find it fast. 44. A team of analysts collaborates on a shared SQL query file that gets modified frequently by different members. After a recent edit introduced errors, the team needs to revert to a previous working version and track exactly who made each change and when it happened. Which system supports this workflow? A. Metadata repository. B. Data anonymization. C. Conditional formatting. D. Version control. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, D. Version control. Explanation. Option D is correct because a version control system tracks and manages changes to files or code over time, allows reverting to previous versions, and records who made each modification. Git is a common example used for shared SQL queries. Option A is incorrect because a metadata repository stores and manages information about data, including its location and structure. It does not track change history for individual files or allow teams to revert to previous versions of their work. Option B is incorrect because data anonymization removes personally identifiable information from datasets for privacy protection. It has no functionality for tracking file changes, identifying who modified code, or reverting to earlier versions. Option C is incorrect because conditional formatting is a spreadsheet tool that changes cell appearance based on specific value conditions. It is a visual display feature in spreadsheets and cannot track changes or manage version history for SQL files. A team of analysts shares a SQL query file. Multiple people edit it frequently. Someone introduces an error. The team needs to roll back to a previous working version and see exactly who changed what and when. That's version control. A version control system tracks and manages changes to files or code over time. It lets you revert to earlier versions when something breaks. It records who made each change and when. Git is the most common example, and it's widely used for shared SQL queries in professional settings. A metadata repository stores information about data, location, structure, access logs. It doesn't track edit history for individual files or let you roll back code. Data anonymization removes personal identifiers from datasets. That's a privacy tool, not a collaboration or change tracking tool. Conditional formatting changes how spreadsheet cells look based on value conditions. It's a visual display feature that has zero capability for tracking code changes or managing file versions. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you when a question describes reverting to previous versions, tracking who changed what, or managing shared code. Version control is the answer. Quick recall hook. Version control = revert, track, collaborate. 45. An analyst finishes a project and moves all completed files into a dedicated historical folder, separate from active work. The analyst also creates subfolders organized by topic within the active projects area to reduce visual clutter and improve searchability. Which organizational practice describes this file management approach? A. Archiving and foldering. B. Data replication. C. Metadata tagging. D. Normalization. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. Archiving and foldering. Explanation: option A is correct because archiving moves old projects to a separate location to reduce clutter, and foldering organizes files into folders and subfolders by topic. Both are recommended best practices for keeping data organized and easy to locate. Option B is incorrect because data replication stores the same data in multiple locations for redundancy or backup purposes. Moving completed files to a historical folder is about organization and decluttering, not about creating copies of data across locations. Option C is incorrect because metadata tagging involves adding descriptive information to data elements for identification and search purposes. The described activities involve physically organizing files into folder structures, not adding descriptive metadata labels to content. Option D is incorrect because normalization is a database design process that creates tables and relationships to eliminate redundancy. Organizing physical files into folders and archiving old projects is a file system activity completely separate from database table design. An analyst wraps up a project and moves all completed files into a dedicated historical folder, away from active work. Then the analyst creates subfolders organized by topic in the active projects area to cut down clutter and make things easier to search. Two practices at work here: archiving and foldering. Archiving means moving old or completed projects to a separate location so they don't crowd your workspace. Foldering means organizing your active files into folders and subfolders by topic. Both are recommended best practices for data organization. Data replication stores the same data in multiple locations for backup or redundancy. Moving files to a historical folder is about organization, not making copies across servers. Metadata tagging adds descriptive labels to data for identification and search. The analyst is physically reorganizing files into folders, not adding descriptive tags to the files themselves. Normalization is a database design process that creates tables and relationships to reduce redundancy. Organizing files on a file system has nothing to do with relational database structure. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. Moving old files to a separate location is archiving. Organizing files into folders and subfolders is foldering. When both appear together, archiving and foldering. Quick recall hook: archive the old, folder the active. 46. A data analyst receives a dataset where dates are formatted differently across columns, some using month, day, year, and others using year, month, day. The analyst needs to standardize all date formats and rename several columns before combining this data with another dataset. Which process describes these types of changes? A. Data anonymization. B. Data governance. C. Data transformation. D. Data replication. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, CE, data transformation. Explanation: option C is correct because data transformation is the process of changing data format, structure, or values to make it more useful. Standardizing date formats and renaming columns before combining datasets are common data transformation activities. Option A is incorrect because data anonymization removes personally identifiable information from datasets for privacy protection purposes. Standardizing date formats and renaming columns are structural changes, not privacy-related removal of identifying information. Option B is incorrect because data governance establishes formal processes and policies for managing a company's data assets. The analyst is performing hands-on data changes, not creating organizational policies or management frameworks for data assets. Option D is incorrect because data replication stores copies of data in multiple locations for redundancy or access purposes. The analyst is changing formats and column names within a dataset, not copying that data to additional storage systems or locations. An analyst gets a dataset with a mess of date formats. Some columns use month, day, year, others use year, month, day. The analyst needs to standardize those dates and rename several columns before combining this data with another dataset. That's data transformation. Data transformation is the process of changing data's format, structure, or values to make it more useful. Standardizing dates, renaming columns, reformatting values before a merge. All transformation activities. The study notes list these explicitly: renaming, moving, combining columns, standardizing variable names, and saving files in different formats. Data anonymization removes personally identifiable information. Changing date formats has nothing to do with privacy. Data governance creates formal policies for managing data assets. The analyst is doing hands-on work with the data, not writing organizational rules. Data replication copies data to multiple locations. The analyst is changing formats within a dataset, not duplicating it elsewhere. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes standardizing formats, renaming columns, or restructuring data before combining it with something else, that's data transformation. Quick recall hook. Transformation =. Transform the format to fit. 47. An analyst stores daily temperature readings for 12 cities over an entire year. Each city occupies a single row, and each column represents a different month with the temperature value stored in that cell. A colleague says this format is great for line charts, but harder to use for advanced statistical modeling. Which data format is the analyst using? A. Long data. B. Unstructured data. C. Nominal data. D. Wide data. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, D. Wide data. Explanation: option D is correct because wide data gives every subject a single row, with multiple columns holding different attribute values. Each city in one row with 12-month columns matches this format, which is easier to read and ideal for charts. Option A is incorrect because long data stores each row as one time point per subject, meaning each city would have 12 separate rows for each monthly reading. The described layout with one row per city and multiple month columns is the opposite of long format. Option B is incorrect because unstructured data cannot be organized into rows and columns, such as audio or video files. Temperature readings organized in a clear grid of rows and columns are structured data stored in either wide or long format. Option C is incorrect because nominal data is a type of qualitative classification for categories without any set order. Monthly temperature readings are quantitative continuous measurements, and the question asks about the shape of the data layout rather than its type. 12 cities, one row each, 12-month columns with temperature values. Each city gets a single row and different months spread across the columns. That layout is wide data. Wide data gives every subject a single row with multiple columns holding different attribute values. It's easy to read, great for line charts and simple trend comparisons. The colleague in the question says it's great for charts, but harder for advanced statistical modelling, say, that tracks perfectly with how wide data works in practice. Long data is the opposite. In long format, each city would have 12 separate rows, one per month. That means multiple rows per subject. The described layout has one row per city, so it's clearly not long. Unstructured data can't fit into rows and columns at all. Audio files, video files, social media posts. Temperature readings in a clean grid are structured through and through. Nominal data is a qualitative classification for unranked categories. Temperature readings are quantitative measurements, and the question asks about the shape of the layout, not the data type. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. One row per subject with multiple columns for different attributes. Wide data, multiple rows per subject with one observation per row. Long data, quick recall hook, wide =, one wide row per subject. 48. After cleaning a large customer database, an analyst uses a case statement in SQL to fix remaining name misspellings found during a final review without permanently changing the stored records. The analyst then rechecks the entire dataset against the original business problem to confirm everything aligns. Which two processes is the analyst performing? A. Verification and documentation. B. Normalization and replication. C. Anonymization and tokenization. D. Transformation and governance. Can you guess the answer? Correct answer, A. Verification and documentation. Explanation. Option A is correct because verification confirms that data cleaning was well executed and results are accurate. Using case statements to fix errors during review and checking alignment with business objectives are both part of the verification and documentation workflow. Option B is incorrect because normalization organizes database tables to reduce redundancy and replication stores data in multiple locations. The analyst is reviewing and confirming cleaning quality, not restructuring database tables or copying data to additional servers. Option C is incorrect because anonymization removes personal identifiers and tokenization replaces data with random substitutes for security. The analyst is verifying data quality after cleaning, not performing any privacy protection or security-related data operations. Option D is incorrect because transformation changes data formats and governance establishes data management policies. The analyst is confirming cleaning accuracy and documenting findings, which falls under verification and documentation rather than these other processes. After cleaning a large customer database, an analyst uses a case statement in SQL to fix remaining name misspellings found during a final review without permanently changing the stored records. Then the analyst rechecks the entire dataset against the original business problem to confirm everything lines up. These are two processes working together: verification and documentation. Verification confirms that cleaning was done correctly and the data is accurate and reliable. Using case statements to catch and fix errors during review is part of that verification. Checking alignment with the business problem is the final alignment piece of verification. Documentation tracks the changes, additions, and fixes made during cleaning, so there's a record. Normalization and replication deal with database table structure and copying data to multiple locations. That's not what's happening here. Anonymization and tokenization are privacy and security techniques, removing identifiers and replacing data with tokens. The analyst is reviewing quality, not protecting privacy. Transformation and governance cover format changes and policy frameworks. The analyst is confirming accuracy and documenting work, not transforming data or setting rules. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you: case statements to fix errors during review, plus checking alignment with the business problem. That's verification and documentation. Quick recall hook: verify the work, document the journey. 49. A data team maintains a chronologically ordered document that records every modification made to a shared project, including what was changed, who made the change, and why it was made. The document categorizes entries as added, changed, fixed, or removed. What is this type of project record called? A. Metadata repository. B. Changelog. C. Data model. D. Schema. What do you think is the answer? Correct answer, B. Changelog. Explanation: option B is correct because a changelog is a file containing a chronologically ordered list of modifications made to a project. Best practices include documenting who, what, and why for each change, organized by categories like added, changed, fixed, or removed. Option A is incorrect because a metadata repository stores and manages metadata about data assets, including their location and structure. It does not chronologically record project modifications categorized by type, like a changelog specifically does. Option C is incorrect because a data model visually represents how data is organized, structured, and related within systems. It maps data architecture rather than tracking the history of changes made to a project over its entire lifetime. Option D is incorrect because a schema displays column names and structural information about a dataset in a database. It describes the current structure of data tables, but does not record a historical timeline of project modifications and their reasons. A data team keeps a chronologically ordered document that records every modification made to a shared project. It tracks what was changed, who made the change, and why. Entries are categorized as added, changed, fixed, or removed. That's a changelog. A changelog is a file containing a chronologically ordered list of modifications made to a project. Best practices say to document the who, what, and why for each entry, organize changes by category, and list versions from most recent to oldest. A metadata repository stores and manages information about data assets, where they live, how they're structured, who accessed them. It doesn't track project modification histories. A data model visually represents how data is organized, structured, and related within systems. It maps architecture, not change history. A schema shows column names and structural information about a dataset in a database. It describes current structure. It doesn't record a timeline of what got modified and why. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you: chronological record of project changes with who, what, and why. That's a changelog. The categories added, changed, fixed, and removed are the giveaway. Quick recall hook: changelog = changelog, who changed what and why. 50. After an analyst finishes cleaning a dataset, 3 final checks must be performed before presenting findings. The analyst must confirm the business problem is clearly defined, confirm the project goal is still valid, and verify the cleaned data actually supports that stated goal. What is this final step called? A. Data merging, B. Normalization, C. Final alignment check, D. Data replication. Do you know the answer? Correct answer, C. Final alignment check. Explanation: option C is correct because the final alignment check, after cleaning, involves confirming the business problem, confirming the project goal, and verifying the data supports that goal. This step ensures everything connects before findings are presented. Option A is incorrect because data merging combines two or more datasets into a single unified dataset. The described process reviews whether cleaned data aligns with business objectives, not whether multiple data sources should be joined together physically. Option B is incorrect because normalization organizes data in relational databases by creating tables and establishing relationships to reduce redundancy. The described three-step review focuses on business alignment, not on database structural optimization activities. Option D is incorrect because data replication copies data to multiple storage locations for redundancy or backup purposes. The analyst is performing a quality and alignment review of cleaned data, not duplicating it across additional systems or storage locations. You've cleaned your data. Now comes the last checkpoint before presenting your findings. Three things need to happen. Confirm the business problem is clearly defined, confirm the project goal is still valid, and verify that the cleaned data actually supports that goal. This three-step review is called the final alignment check. It makes sure everything connects, the problem, the goal, and the data, before you put anything in front of stakeholders. Skipping this step means you risk presenting findings that don't actually answer the question that was asked. Data merging combines two or more datasets into one. That's a preparation activity, not a review step that checks business alignment. Normalization organizes relational database tables and reduces redundancy. The three-step review is about business alignment, not database structure. Data replication copies data to multiple storage locations. The analyst is reviewing whether the clean data fits the project's purpose, not duplicating anything. Here's a WGU D467 exam tip for you. When a question describes three final checks, confirm the problem, confirm the goal, verify data supports the goal. That's the final alignment check. Quick recall hook: final alignment =, problem, goal, data all line up. You have reached the end of our first question set. For the free complete exam preparation, visit our website, link in the description, where you find thousands more practice questions and comprehensive study guides. Thanks for studying with us today. See you in the next video.